And now, more Sports and Torts with David Spada and Elliott Harris.
Elliott, what's the chances of me getting to interview Dan Marino with you?
I'd like to think they're fairly good. I hope they would happen this century. We have to sort of work our way toward that.
I thought we hit the top with Jim Brown and Gale Sayers.
We did. But you have this Dan Marino fixation.
I've been working on him forever, and I just can't get it to click. Like Frank Gifford finally clicked one day.
Frank Gifford.
And Jim Brown just clicked the one day. I mean, I don't know about Dan Marino.
Well, maybe we can find a way to him.
Do we go through Pittsburgh with Mike Ditka, or you think go through his center?
I think let's take the center route.
The center route? Because, I mean, he had his back all those years and his front.
I think we're talking about Dwight Stephenson, former Miami Dolphin center.
I remember him blocking so many times for Marino, and you know what? He protected him well.
Yeah, I think they that line led the league in fewest sacks allowed and things like that.
Well, let's get right to an interview we taped with Dwight Stephenson.
Dwight, I see that you went in the Hall of Fame back a couple of years ago. That would be a real pleasure for you.
Absolutely. It's one of those accomplishments that never even considered possible for me. Am I happy to be there? I absolutely am. It's awesome to be in that club. It's some great guys in there, and I'm happy to be in the club.
Now, when you think of linemen making it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it's a guy who's been there 10, 15, maybe even longer. Your career was fairly short. Did it surprise you to reach that level, to get in?
Like I mentioned, really, it's one of those things that, to get in the Hall of Fame is truly an honor. It's something that I didn't even think possible. But to say, when I look at and compare myself to some of the guys that went into the Hall of Fame, some guys had a lot longer career and that sort of thing, and they deserve to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm in there, and even though my career, might not be 15 years, but I did play in the league. I was in the league 9 years. 8 as a player. 1 year I was there. I was on injury reserve. But it's compared to some guys' career, yes, the career is not that long. Am I happy to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? I feel I deserve to be in there. I do feel as though it's one of those honors that I'm not going to give it up. I'm very, very happy to be there, and if I'd done it in 8 years, I'm even more proud of that.
You played for what? Only 2 coaches in your college and pro career, Don Shula and Bear Bryant?
I didn't really realize how fortunate I was at the time. Playing for, like you mentioned, one coach, and probably the greatest coach ever, and possibly in college football. I had my old 4 years. He taught me things that I still carry with me today. And then leave there and come down here and play for probably the greatest coach to ever coach on this level, and that's Coach Don Shula. I understood and I knew I was around some guys that were the best at what they did, but I probably didn't appreciate the way I should have. I really enjoyed it, and like I said, Coach Shula taught me things I still carry with me today. They were great. If I had to do it all over again, I think I would probably, just appreciate it just that much more because, like I said, I did appreciate it. I enjoyed playing there at the University of Alabama, playing for Coach Paul Bear Bryant. It was great experience.
How does a guy from North Carolina end up at Alabama?
You got to have some good high school teammates, some really great ones that can go anywhere in the country. And that's really how it kind of happened. Alabama came there, and a lot of other guys came there to our high school there, and one or two guys. It was 2 great football players there, Woodrow Wilson and Simon Gupton, and we all went pretty much grade school, high school, and all that together. And they had opportunity to go pretty much anywhere they wanted to go in the country. And the University of Alabama came there, and they were recruiting those 2 guys. And my high school coach, Coach Mike Smith, which is a great coach in his own right. Great coach. He said, hey, we got Dwight Stephenson here, and I think he can play there at the University of Alabama. I guess that's what he said. And anyway, they looked at me and they said, okay, yeah, we'll take him too. I think they really thought that they were going to get those other two guys, and then I was coming along. What happened was those other two guys, I signed first, okay? And then the other two guys, they pretty much they had a deal. They were going to go to school together, and they went to NC State. So we all signed up pretty much on that same day. I went to the university. I decided to come to University of Alabama, and then after I had already made my commitment, they decided to go to NC State. And it worked out well for everybody. I tell you, I went to the University of Alabama. I had a great time. And then they went on down to NC State, and both of them made like all conference and that sort of thing. They were did well there as well as stuff. And we're still great friends today and stuff, as a matter of fact. So,
do you ever aggravate Joe Namath saying, listen, Bear Bryant said I was the best player ever coached?
I know, you know that. But when people say that, right, I think the more I tell them, no, he didn't say I was the greatest player or the best player that he ever coached. What he said was I was the best center that he ever coached. And that seems to get more life when I try to tell people that he didn't say I was the greatest coach, greatest player of all time, or greatest player that ever played for him. No, there's some great players played there. University of Alabama. You're talking about the Joe Namath, John Hanna, Terry Jones. I mean, just Tony Nathan, some great football players, and I'm happy to be mentioned amongst them. He did not say that I was the greatest football player that he ever coached. He said I was the best center. So that alone means a whole lot to me right there.
Yeah, but without the center, Joe Namath, Kenny Stabler, none of those guys do anything. You got to have the guy to give him the ball, right?
No question. I mean, the center is very, very important. It's one of those positions that I think that, it's kind of a natural leadership position. It's one of those, you set the huddle, everybody set themselves. I mean, they set around you, and then when you break the huddle, you're the first one to break the huddle, and if you walk to the line, I think everybody else walks to the line. If you run to the ball, I think they'll run to the ball. So you kind of, it's a natural leadership position and stuff. Now, at different times, we have a lot of responsibility. Our job is to try to keep we have play calls to make and that sort of thing, blocking assignments to make sure that we can protect the quarterback, or, if it's a running play, make sure that the running play is successful and whatnot. But I enjoyed it. Of all the positions on the football field, that is the position that I wanted to play. I didn't necessarily, would I would have played anywhere, but that position was some way, I always gravitated towards it. When I was coming up, I was a center at the Minnesota Vikings. His name is Mick Tingelhoff. I never got a chance, never have met him, but he was a guy that I watched. But I watched all the centers, and then I watched, of course, Mike Webster and Jim Langer and Ringo, and all the great centers. But I always gravitated toward the center position.
What was Bear Bryant like? Do you have any stories about him?
He was it's one of those experiences that I tell you, he was probably the right guy for me at that time in my life. I came to the University of Alabama probably, not expecting a whole lot. Wondering really if I could even play there, if I even deserved to be there. And, he kind of got us, he got us in that training camp, or got us in that, got us in those tour days, that sort of thing. He pretty much broke us all down, pretty much, and kind of, let us know that, hey, you know what, it's great you were good in high school. And it's great that you feel good about yourself, but you're all starting here on the even level here right now, and it depends on how hard you work and what you do and decisions that you make, is how good a football player you become here at the University of Alabama, and what you do for the rest of your life. So that's kind of he taught me things back then that really, like I said, he was the right guy that had come into my life, I feel, at that time. So I enjoyed it.
How did Don Shula's coaching style compare to Coach Bryant?
I think they were very similar. I think that they were very, very organized. Their practices, there was no lot of gagging around it. Their practices very, very organized. They went over situations. They would go over situations, game type situations. They didn't leave much to chance. They wanted to, getting on where we were going to stay, everything. Those guys were involved in the details. They may not have necessarily everyday monitoring, but they were involved in details, and they knew what was going on. It was a great experience, really, playing there at University of Alabama, seeing our Coach Brian, who was dealing with boys. Pretty much we're young boys. Older boys trying to be men and that sort of thing. And he kind of handled us that way, knowing that we need to be molded and decisions we're gonna make, like quitting or those type of things. You can't quit. I mean, you quit once, it's easier to do it the next time. Those kind of things we learned there from you down at the University of Alabama. Then when I came down with the Dolphins, Coach Shula, he was dealing more with men. I mean, some of us had families and so forth, and had a lot more responsibilities and whatnot. And he treated us that way, but he didn't need much chance either. When it came down to the football games, I mean, he would go over situations. You overlearn situations. That was one of his phrases. You overlearn it, but they were very highly organized, very competitive people that they taught you things, both of them, that you carry with you for the rest of your life.
I'll tell you what, though, you saw Don Shula change as a coach because he was known with the Dolphins as a running coach, and all of a sudden he gets Dan Marino, and it became Air Marino.
Right. He recognized also the rule changes. You can't keep on doing the same things, let's say 30 years ago. I mean, the rules changed, and I think Coach Shula, he changed with the rules and whatnot. The game, the passing game became more of an opportunity, and then you had Dan Marino, no question. It was kind of like it was a match made there and stuff. And Dan we were a good football team, and Dan was what we needed and that sort of thing. We needed a guy like the guy was awesome. He's an awesome leader. He and a competitor, and just a guy that's tough. I mean, a really tough physical as well as mentally. I mean, a very, very tough guy. So I enjoyed Dan.
When Marino joined the team in '83, you'd been there since '80. Could you tell right away that this guy was different from the other quarterbacks?
Yeah, you could. Dan was a guy. You just saw something about him that this guy he can throw the football. He can throw the football, and then you watch him in games, and he wasn't afraid. Like I heard other people say, he wasn't afraid of making a mistake. He would go out there and he would try something, and if it didn't work, he wouldn't say necessarily he'd never do that again kind of thing. He looked at it like, well, if I would have only did this, or if I did that, and the next time he'd go out there and make that correction. I mean, he was a guy that was going for it. He wasn't interested in, I feel, in almost getting there. I mean, he wanted to go for it and stuff, and that attitude was a great attitude.
Did he drive Coach Shula nuts at times because he would just do his own thing?
You know what? I think that Coach Shula, again, I mean, he adapted again. I mean, at times, Dan, you did want him to kind of do his own thing. When he get in the groove and he's out there and he knows, and those guys out there on the field, some wide receivers that kind of knew what they wanted to get done as well and stuff like that. I mean, he would kind of he would be more open to hearing their ideas and whatnot, or letting them kind of, what I want to say, never out of control or anything, but let them try things, and let Dan would call his plays at times and stuff like that. But he never, Dan, it's kind of like, I mean, he was there, but sometimes in situations, especially in the 2-minute drills and whatnot, I mean, you just got to kind of go, and they will make adjustments on the field. Instead of doing this at 12 yards, go down to 16 yards, 17 yards. And if that guy don't do this right here, you could keep on going to the goal line, and I get it to you. Those kind of things are said in the huddle and stuff. And, and they worked for us. So it was Dan was the right guy. Dan was the right guy.
The Dolphins are one of those franchises that tend to elevate their offensive linemen, whether it's Larry Little or Kuchenberg or Langer. There's a history there. Did you feel comfortable going into that position of almost being put on a pedestal, or at least recognized for what the offensive line does?
Yeah, I think that it's very, very important that any successful team realizes that offensive line, not necessarily the individual, but the offensive line as a whole, is very, very important. I mean, that offensive line decides, I feel, or defensive line decides really who wins that game for the most part, for the most games. If they're playing well together and they're coming out the football, and like you mentioned, I mean, the Miami Dolphins down here, they promoted and they knew the offensive linemen, Coach Shula, they realized they were important, and they had great coach in Monty
Kiffin.
No, not Monty Kiffin, but Monty Clark.
Okay.
Monty Clark. But in the 72 and the undefeated team back then and stuff. But they put the emphasis on the offensive line and stuff, and they didn't necessarily have all number one draft choices either. But they had guys that really would put it on the line every play, and that's why I feel the offensive lineman you need to. I mean, you got to have a guy that's not necessarily going out there, the most talented guy, but a guy that literally he'll put it on the line every play and give you all he got, and that sort of thing. That I think is very, very important. But the offensive lineman, I think, very important to the success of the football team, too. I think that they, most time, they're not just because they're a part of it, but usually they're the hardest working group on the field or whatever stuff. If they're not on the field, they're in the weight room and, studying plays and trying to, coordinate and make sure that they work well together as a unit. But the Miami Dolphins they've always put emphasis on, I feel, on offensive linemen and having quality offensive line and line play. So, and I think again, continue to see that. They've invested heavily in some high round draft choices here lately and stuff, and they just have to continue to work and play well and they'll get to the point where they'll probably communicate without doing a whole lot of talking. They kind of know what one needs to do and what they're trying to get done out there on that field.
Dan Marino was my favorite football player of all time, but the play I remember most for was that fake spike where he threw for the touchdown. Did he call that play Shula, or was that just an improv?
That play happened after I had left here, but it's a play that's been in our, it's been in our, when I was the repertoire or in our playbook and whatnot for, even when I was here. But when that play actually, probably a year after I retired, maybe 2 years after I retired. But it's one of those plays that, with the right situation and everything, I mean, it's a perfect play. And Dan recognized it, and he called it. I think probably Dan called it, probably. I'm not sure. I don't know who gets the credit for the call in the play. But it sounds like something Dan probably done on the field out there and stuff. And because I don't know if Coach Shula had time to get it from the sideline. It worked like clockwork. It was, just one of those, another amazing moment in Dan Marino's career.
What defensive lineman gave you the most trouble?
Joe Klecko is one of the strongest guys I ever played against, and one of the nicest guys. And he's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Then you move on. And Howard Long was after him. He was just he was an athlete. The guy could do it all pretty much. He could play the run. Smart guy. Just one heck of a football player. He could pretty much do it all.
I felt bad for Joe Klecko. It seemed like he was always in Mark Gastineau's shadow. Gastineau was the showman doing the dances, but Klecko got it done.
He did. Joe Klecko was the guy was phenomenal. He could play the run as well as the pass, and when they had it going, when that defensive line had it going, they were at New York Stock Exchange. They were something, and Joe Klecko was the lead. I mean, he was just a special football player. Great guy.
Did Dan Marino really give you guys isotoner gloves to wear, or was that just a commercial?
No, he actually gave us some gloves. He did that. It wasn't that day or whatever, but he actually gave us some isotoner gloves. I think he might have gave more than just off the line. He brought some in the locker room, but he made sure we got some and stuff. And Dan's always taking care of the guy, and stuff, and doing things, and we go to dinner and that kind of stuff. He done those things for us as a unit and stuff, and just a great guy. He wasn't a guy. He wasn't a standoffish. He was a guy that literally he would hang out with the offensive linemen. He's a great guy. Great guy.
What I don't get is Eric Dickerson bought his linemen Rolex watches, and you got gloves. Something's not right there.
Well, Eric Dickerson, I mean, great football player, and he took care of his offensive lineman, and that is absolutely great. And but Dan Marino took care of his. I mean, he didn't buy us a Rolex watch, but Dan is a true friend. I mean, he's a guy that when we need something, all you have to do is call on the guy. And I'm not saying that he can't call on Dickerson and his guys can't call on him, but I do want to mention Dan is just one super guy and stuff, and we all appreciate playing with him. I appreciate friendship now. I mean, just awesome individual and a real family guy, and an awesome teammate and friend.
Yeah. The difference is you can probably go to Marino today and he'll give you another pair of isotoner gloves. I don't think Eric Dickerson's still handing out Rolex watches.
No, there you go. So Dan can repeat that. He can do that. Do what he did the first time. He can do it again or whatever stuff. But no, he's a great guy. Great guy. Still doing a lot of good things down here in South Florida.
It's hard to believe that he only had 2 coaches during his whole career.
Amazing.
I mean, Bear Bryant and Don Shula.
Yeah, 2 legendary coaches. Pretty impressive.
Our next guest had, 1 coach his whole career? Randy White?
In the pros.
In the pros, Tom Landry. In college, he probably had 1 or 2, but it's amazing. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to go from one side of the line to the other. We're going to have Dolphin Hall of Famer Randy White. Stay tuned.